Okay, well, welcome everyone to this meeting of the Virtual IMS User Group. Thank you for joining us. Yeah, I'm Trevor Eddles. I'm CEO of iTechEd Limited. We're a mainframe consultancy analysis and technical authoring organization, and we're responsible for the content on the Virtual IMS website, and we produce the newsletters. The website is at itech, that's itech-ed.com/virtual IMS. So let me run through the agenda for this meeting. As usual, most of the meeting will be taken up with the presentation. And today our guest presenters are Haley Fung, IBM Product Manager for IMS and Ansible for Z, and Ajay Jashnani, Senior Software Engineer at IBM. And their talk is entitled Ansible and IMS, Part 2, Getting Started with the Ansible IMS Collection. And a copy of the slides from this presentation should be with us on the website later today, certainly by tomorrow. And if you missed any of our previous meetings, you can download copies of the presentations from our website, and you can watch the whole recording again. So there's a link on our resources page. Following Haley and AJ's presentation, any questions you have for them, we'll move on to the latest IMS news and the latest IMS related articles. Then I'll give you the dates and times for the next virtual meetings, and that's the plan. So I'm anticipating that it'll last for around an hour. Anyway, as I just said, today's presentation is from Haley Fung and Ajay Jashnani. I've only got some information about Haley, so let me give you that. Haley is the IBM Product Manager for IMS and Ansible for Z. She drives product direction in building solutions for enterprise modernization and integration for IMS and automation solutions for Z. Haley is a frequent presenter at global technical conferences. Her deep technical expertise and a passion and dedication for customers have helped many IBM, IMS and Z customers to modernize and enhance their application infrastructures, as well as automating their Z resources and Ansible. So Haley and AJ is going to start. I think I'd like to thank you very much for being with us today. And what I'm going to do now is see if I can pass control over to you. So let me stop that. Right, AJ, you should now be host.
All right, let me go ahead and share my screen. Can everybody hear me okay and see the screen?
Yes, thank you.
All right. All right, I will hand it off to Haley to get us started.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, Trevor, for such a nice introduction. Hi, everyone. This is Haley. I'm happy to come back again. So this is the part 2 of the Ansible discussion. And today I have AJ to join me in this presentation. And we're going to give you a little more deep dive into the IMS collection. I think last year we have presented you a high-level overview of the Red Hat Ansible Certified Content from IBM Z offering, how you can actually use Ansible for C to help you to build a modern automation framework from your IBM Z as well as the IMS environments. So in today's agenda, we're going to go through a little more details into the IMS collection. AJ will walk you through some of the use cases and also have some of the playbooks walk through in more details. We're going to talk to you about how to get started, and any questions during the presentation are very welcome. And I'm going to also end the presentation with a new offering that we introduced just a couple months ago, which is called the IBM Z modernization stack, and how that can help you in the overall modernization and digital transformation journey. So with that, I'm going to get started with Ansible and ZOS first. I'm going to start with a few charts just to refresh everyone's memory about what Ansible can do and help with your IBM Z and IMS environment in terms of IT automation. Okay, so let's get started with the next chart, please. right. So first of all, started with some of the business value, why modern automation is important in IBM Z. In the several past years, we have gone through a time of extraordinary challenges and changes in the world, right? Not only at a personal level, but for business as well. Before we have the pandemic, a lot of businesses across the industry have started a journey for digital transformation. Many of the customer has come to us to do, modernization in all sorts of different areas. But with the pandemic, the digital transformation has been accelerated, right? We experience all of that. All your customers or your employees now have to heavily rely on remote services and online online work, online tasks, and expecting fast and personalized, 24/7 services. So with that rate, we have seen tremendous demand and interest of digital transformation that is needed in many of the businesses. As you can see in the statistics on the screen, 60% of the executives are speeding up the digital transformation, and 265% more executives are saying that this type of transformation is significantly important compared to 2 years ago. Next chart, please. So there are 3 key areas if you look at the modernization in terms of application modernization and IT automation on IBM Z. There are three key areas that we heard from our clients all the time, and those are the focus area in many of our IBM Z and IMS customers that kind of look at how they can actually do transformation and what are the areas that, how they can bring it to a modern digital platform faster. There are 3 key asks or 3 key areas. First is to find ways to make access to existing Z application, whether it's the IMS transaction or IMS data, in a simple way, right? And many of you have already started a journey with our offerings, a couple of years back, with ZOS Connect, for example, or other solution. It can help you to create APIs easily to be able to access your existing IMS transaction or IMS data without any change on the mainframe side. Agile Enterprise DevOps is also a very important key area. We have many of our customers doing modern transformation to their whole DevOps pipeline. They see the need to make changes to their system, make changes to the application, and be able to deploy in a much faster, more regular fashion. And as well as they want to have the developer to be easy to get on board and be able to, work on existing application, mainframe application, and build a hybrid application using the industry standard tools and development environment, right? So the cloud native development and also a modern pipeline to be able to integrate your mainframe and Z application access becomes a very crucial piece in the whole application modernization area. And lastly is the standardized IT automation, right? If we're talking about how we'll be able to empower your developers, how we'll be able to reduce the needs for specialized mainframe skills to be able to automate your platform such that you will be able to do like operation tasks in a much easier fashion. You'll be able to, build scripts to automate your day-to-day activities instead of rely heavily on, mainframe specific skills like, JCL and Rex code and stuff like that. And that's really where what we are focus of today's topic and presentation about is about how Ansible, being a very popular automation platform, can help you to standardize the IT automation in your area, especially with your IMS operation access as well. Okay. So next, we're going to talk about Ansible and our IMS offering. So Ansible, Red Hat Ansible Automation Platform is a very extremely popular IT automation platform, especially in the distributed side of many of your enterprises. So what we find is a lot of our clients has already been adopted using Red Hat Ansible automation platform for automating across IT operations in the enterprise framework. So being the leading automation solution, it can bring a lot of value if we can also use Ansible to manage and automate the IBM Z access, where that will empower the user, right, whoever is going to build your automation script, to be able to have the same experience for automating ZOS and distributed system, right? And then you will be able to manage your infrastructure automation as code. You'll be able to make the automation much easier. They will be using the same, standardized platform as well as languages, or building the same type of script to automate the different types of IT tasks across the different platforms in your enterprise, including IBM Z. So with that, next chart, please. We take advantage of the Ansible platform, and that's where we create the certified content collection known as the Ansible for IBM Z collection, where we provide a powerful set of playbooks and modules that allows you to enable automation with IBM Z, such that we can help you to handle common ZOS tasks, as well as dedicated collections and samples for your specific IBM products and middleware solutions. So our collections is available in 2 places. It's available on Ansible Galaxy, which is the open source based community version. And we also have it, a subset of it also available in the Automation Hub, which is the certified and fully supported collections. So out of the box with the Ansible for Z collections, we provide you 6 collections out of the box, and that including the core collections, which will cover the automation needs for all your kind of like base ZOS automation tasks, right? It can allow you to invoke JCL, can allow you to, access the, the data set, or, looking at all sort of different, basic ZOS tasks that you can do with integrating with Ansible. And then on top of it, we built additional collection that either leverage the core collections or other mechanism that is specialized in a specific product or area. For example, we had the Kicks collection, which allows you to automate using Ansible and using Ansible Playbook to be able to manage your Kicks resources, right? You can use our ZOSMF collection that from Ansible, you'll be able to invoke your existing ZOSMF workflows. We also have collections covering from a system automation perspective, as well as some of the hardware management console collection like the CHMZ. And of course, we have the IMS collections. We're going to deep dive into some of the use cases in just a minute. Okay. And in addition to the 6 collections that I introduced, we also have additional samples, and these are available in our Ansible repository that covers a variety of products. So the whole key point here is we really want to build an Ansible ecosystem across the different IBM Z portfolio that will enable you to be able to use Ansible in all sort of different use cases and scenarios to automate your IBM Z system, right? So in addition to the 6 that I introduced, we also have sample playbooks available to help you to do like DB2 schema, the provisioning a DB2 schema, or application objects. We'll have samples and collections available to you for your MQ needs, for example, managing or creating objects for managing the MQ queues. We also have sample to show how you can use Ansible to do application provisioning and use Urban Code Deploy to deploy your application as well. And we have also samples available to you to provision a ZOS Connect system and deploy APIs, as well as provisioning a WAS Liberty server. So there are many of the use cases that you can do from an Ansible perspective. And if I go to the next chart, I will show you a little bit more details, right? And these are the key use cases for Ansible. And these use cases, not only that we are showing you what use cases and all the capabilities, but many of those are the clients that have explored Ansible for Z collection, and they tell us what are the use cases they were able to adopt in the environment. Since we have launched Ansible for C, we have tremendous interest from our clients for looking into how Ansible can really help them to automate the IBM Z system. And these are some of the sample use cases that they have told us. For example, in the area for provisioning and maintenance, some of the clients are looking at how they can actually build self-service provisioning portals such that they can empower the developers to, with a one click of a button, they will be able to provision their application environment for them to do dev and test. They are looking into some use case are provisioning middleware or systems after they provide fixed plex, or to use Ansible to help them to roll out maintenance for fixed plex for hundreds of servers. In the area of configuration management, you can use Ansible to help you to configure your middleware, as well as a lot of the network and security configuration use case. Another area which is a lot of interest that we have multiple customers is doing, prototype or some of the work in deploying production as well, is security in automation. So we find that we learn from our clients that many of the security configuration automation tasks today many of the tasks were still manual process. For example, dealing with like certificate renewal. So they have to go through a menu to look at what are the SSL certificates expiring, and they will have to renew those certificates manually, or doing like creating new users and password resets. So those you can actually think about using Ansible to help you to automate those tasks, replacing some of the manual procedure today. CI/CD and application deployment is always one of the top popular use cases, right? So as I mentioned, is as enterprise looking at how to deploy faster, right, and more regular mechanism to deploy changes to the application environment, they are also looking at how Ansible can help them to deploy application, integrating the Z application environment into the CI/CD pipeline through other popular pipeline capabilities, as well as using Ansible as the orchestrator. Orchestration is also one of the, I would say, one of the very first simple way to get your automation started with Ansible. What we find from our customer is many of you already have all the mainframe automation in place, right? But they tend to be written in a language that will require some specialized mainframe skills. So one of the use cases that we have heard from our clients is, we can help them to still leverage the existing automation that have in place. So many of those are maybe, reg script or JCL, but they want to build a framework to orchestrate these, siloed automation script together, right, in a more automated fashion. So Ansible definitely can help you to do it. And then in the future, you can kind of looking at extending some of the, JCL-based scripting, or replacing it using the Ansible automation framework using Playbook, such that it will be easier to maintain and easier to onboard your new developers, right, in the long term for those automation scripts. And finally is in the area of what we call the prop the mainframe. And this is another interested areas, because many of our clients said, oh, now it's kind of like the auditing season. We need to do system checks, so we need to create reports for our auditors. So you can use Ansible to help you to collect all sort of information, all sort of auditor security configuration details on your mainframe, and to help you to generate report in an automated fashion by using Ansible. So these are the 6 categories of use cases that we heard from our clients that is across not just for IMS, but for all sort of your IBM Z needs. All right, so with that, I'm going to hand it over to AJ. So we're going to deep dive a little more into the IMS collections and talk to you what our capabilities that we have already available today. And then we were really interested to hear any of the feedback or any of the areas that you would like us to add into the IMS collection. So AJ, I'm going to pass it to you. Oh, by the way, I do want to mention, AJ is one of our, I would say, newer developer into the IMS organization, in the Ansible organization, and he has been, learning IBM Z environment and IMS environment in a lightning, speed. And I think some of them is also based on some of the tooling, an area that we try to use the industry standard, right, tooling and languages and helping, new people like AJ to onboard. So AJ, if you have anything that you can want to share with the audience in terms of your onboarding experience and how like Ansible and some of these newer modern tooling can help you in your journey, feel free to share with the audience. I think many of them will be interested as well. Okay, thank you, AJ.
Sure thing. Thank you, Haley. Hello, everyone. My name is Ajay Jashnani. And as Haley mentioned, I'm a software engineer on one of the Ansible for IBM Z teams. Relatively new to the mainframe world, as well as IMS. Been working with the Ansible for Z team for a little less than 2 years. And today I'm going to be kind of speaking to the IMS Ansible collection that we develop and maintain, as well as do a little bit of a deeper dive into some of the playbooks for IMS provisioning, as well as COBOL application deployment. And then, as Haley also mentioned, towards the end of this presentation, we'll definitely have some time if you have any questions for me. Being new to the mainframe world, IMS world, using Ansible to automate some of those IMS workflows, and what that experience has been like. I'd be happy to share that with you. Overall, my feeling is that Ansible has allowed me to, both learn IMS relatively fast, and then as well as automate some of the IMS workflows in a much easier way than using any other tool. So, without any further ado, I'll get into the IMS collection first. So what you're seeing here is a screenshot of Ansible Galaxy. Ansible Galaxy is the official community page for where we host and manage Ansible content. So typically Ansible content such as collections, roles, etc. Rarely there will be other Ansible objects that will also be hosted in this community page. But the idea being here is that the official content that the IBM Ansible for Z team is developing is published here. So currently in Ansible Galaxy, the screenshot is showing us the IMS Ansible collection page. So this collection in particular supports tasks such as generating IMS database descriptors or DBDs, program specification blocks or PSBs, application control blocks or ACBs, as well as this collection has support for running IMS type 1 and type 2 commands. So in a bit here, I'll actually show us how to navigate to this page and show some relevant links on the top right-hand side. The next thing I wanted to highlight is some of the modules and the plugins that are implemented and supported part of this collection. So if you're looking to generate, ACB libs, DBD libs, PSB libs, we have separate modules to do that. We also have separate modules to manage catalogs. So if you're looking to populate the catalog or purge any records from the catalog, we have separate modules to do that as well. And then if you're looking to invoke any IMS commands, type 1 or type 2 commands, using this collection, We also have two separate modules to do that, the IMS command module, as well as the IMS DBRC module. And alongside, you'll see some plugins and utilities at the bottom here that are also supported part of this collection. So these things, these utilities may not be directly related to some of these modules, but can be used in a standalone capacity. So we're kind of providing some of that capability via this collection as well. So I'll pause here and switch to the Ansible Galaxy page in my browser. So real quick, so this is the galaxy.ansible.com page, and just want to show how we can navigate to the IMS Ansible collection. So I hit the search button. It's taking a little while to respond. I think I was having some network issues earlier, so could be related. Okay, so all we have to do here is type in IBM IMS and hit search, and we'll find our IMS Ansible collection. So in here, as I mentioned, there are several releases actually that are supported, and the latest one being selected by default. If you're looking to install this collection onto your Ansible environment, you can run this command, Ansible Galaxy collection install, and the name of the collection that you wish to install. And by default, it will install the latest version. There's also ways to specify a specific version of the collection here. So on the top right-hand side here, there are some relevant links that I want to quickly go over. So the first one being the repository link. So this will take us to the GitHub repository where our IMS collection is maintained and developed. So it's publicly available. So if anybody is interested in seeing the underlying implementation of this collection, all that source code is here. So for instance, if you look through the plugins folder, modules, you'll see several Python files here that have the implementation for each of the modules that I spoke to just a minute ago. Circling back up to the main page here, there's also a releases section here where we host and manage all collection releases that are in one-to-one mapping with the Ansible Galaxy page. So you can also use the releases that are published here. And then lastly, I do want to mention that this is an open source repository. So if you do encounter any issues, or if you have any feature requests that you'd like to make for the collection, you can do that here at the issues tab, as well as at this point, we're welcoming any contributions to the repository. So if you have any ideas for addressing an issue or implementing a new enhancement, feel free to do that here via a pull request. So that's the repository page on GitHub for the collection. Going back to Ansible Galaxy, we do actually have a full documentation site linked from this page as well. And so what you'll see here is this is the main page where we're showing all the Red Hat Ansible Certified Content for IBM Z documentation. So this includes not just IMS, but some of the other collections that Haley spoke to a few minutes ago. So as this presentation is pertaining to IMS, I'll kind of briefly go over some of the IMS modules that we see here. So in here, you'll see documentation for each of the modules. This documentation will have input parameters, any example code that we have, letting you know how to use each of these modules, and the return values that are associated for each of these modules. So as an example, I'll just go through ACP Gen, starting out with a quick synopsis here as to the intent behind this module, any input parameters, if they're required, optional, etc., that are needed for generating ACP gens. And then more importantly, there's this examples section here where we kind of give you a couple of examples for how you can use the ACP Gen module. So in this particular one, we're creating ACBs for specific PSPs or specific program specification blocks. So part of this ACB gen invocation, I'm providing some of the necessary inputs. And then notice for PSP name, we're specifically providing the PSPs that we want to build, against. And this example here at the bottom is similar, except this does ACB gen building for all PSPs. So in here, for the same PSP name argument, we use the keyword all, which replaces the individually named PSPs above. But yeah, that's a quick, just a quick overview of some of the examples that we have here. And again, this is also supported for some of the rest of the modules as well. So going back to our presentation here. So now that we've talked about the capabilities and some of the content that the IMS Ansible collection provides, I wanted to kind of dive into some of the IMS use cases and kind of see how Ansible helps address some of these topics. So starting out with the application developer. So typically an application developer, would want to self-provision an IMS system, as well as be able to build and deploy a COBOL application to that IMS system. So generally, we have workflows in Ansible that can walk us through that process. And then if you're looking to redeploy, let's say that same COBOL application, then there's a separate playbook, scenario for that as well. Kind of extending that application developer use case, if a DevOps engineer wants to generate a new PSP and essentially extend the scope of that application testing work that was being done, they can do that as well using Ansible. Now this can be driven via a CI/CD pipeline or on their individual DevOps workspace. From an administration standpoint, we can generate reports based off of the status of IMS transactions, and then eventually send out notifications off of those reports. So these notifications can be on Slack or email, and Ansible in general as a tool provides some of those APIs to do that pretty easily. On the right-hand side, there are various database-related use cases. So a database administrator, for instance, would want to use the IMS command or the IMS DBRC commands to manage some of these databases. So for instance, if they're looking to take an IMS database offline and back online because of a so for instance, if they want to take an IMS database offline and back online because of the maintenance, they can do that programmatically using these IMS commands. Likewise, if they're looking to make sure their image copies are in sync, they can use the DBRC commands to do that. And this is kind of more in regards to the recon data sets. So if you have any image copies that have been captured for over a period of time, and you're looking to recover to any of those images, you can use the DBRC commands module for that as well. So now I'll move on to I'll just kind of walk us through some of these playbooks at a high level, as well as the sample collections repository that we have publicly available. So I will switch on over. So I'll switch on over to our samples collections repository page. So this is a public repository that contains example playbooks for not just IMS, but for a broader Red Hat Ansible Certified Content for IBM Z in general. And so The way we've kind of organized this repository is that it's pretty easy to navigate. So if you look through the README file, you'll quickly find a bunch of links to each of the individual example playbooks. So we have some administration playbooks for ZOS and some basic operations as well, some general ZOS concepts if you're getting started and would like to use Ansible for that. And then we also have some provisioning, some middleware provisioning, as well as some application deployment related playbooks, which are more relevant to this audience. So we'll kind of get into a little bit of that here in a minute. And we also have some other subsystem management playbooks as well. So kind of looking beyond the scope of your IMS provisioning or application deployment. We also have some of that capability. So I'll get into IMS first. And so in here, we actually have a couple of samples available. There's one for IMS provisioning and the other for COBOL app deploy. So starting out with IMS provisioning, I'll walk us through just one of the playbooks here in a second. But essentially, this example here contains 3 playbooks, one for provisioning IMS, deprovisioning, second for deprovisioning IMS, and then lastly for querying the IMS instance and checking the status of the IMS services. So in here, looking at one of these Ansible playbooks, so right off the bat, you'll notice that there are a whole bunch of Ansible roles implemented in this playbook. Now, Ansible roles are typically just reusable pieces of code that the developer has chose to kind of abstract away from the main playbook, likely to abstract away the complexity, and then also, if the code is reusable, we want to be able to invoke it again without having to repeat any of that implementation. So each role here has its own purpose. And right now, I just want to go through one of the roles in particular, which is Operations Manager. So throughout this playbook, you'll see that Operations Manager is called 3 times. So earlier in the playbook, it looks like we're invoking this role by passing in a config parameter. Later on in this playbook, it looks like we're passing in a start parameter. And then towards the end, we're passing in a query parameter. So just to kind of give you a high-level idea, this IMS Operations Manager has code that keys off of some of the input variables that are being passed in here. So looking at this overall workflow at a high level, there's some configuration being set pertaining to Operations Manager. And halfway through, it looks like we're starting the Operations Manager. Towards the end, we're querying the Operations Manager to make sure it's started and is running just fine. So what I'll do is I'll now open up the source for this Operations Manager so we can take a look at that. So if I go up one level and click on roles and then locate IMS Operations Manager and look at the tasks file, this will tell me the implementation of this role and how some of that stuff is working. So looking at the code here, you'll quickly see that there's a main block that contains different tasks, and each task here appears to have a conditional, and the conditional actually checks to see the variable value that is being passed in. So for the case, so earlier in the playbook, we were invoking this role with the config variable, so it would essentially execute this block of the task. And so you'll see there are various config tasks, so various configuration related tasks that are needed to get a TMDB session up and running. And then towards the bottom here, you'll see that there is a start conditional, which uses a ZOS operator command to start the Operations Manager. And then likewise, a stop command to do that. So I wanted to show this example just as a way to show that if you have any related code, and you're looking to use it and you're looking to invoke it via the same role, then you can do that using conditionals here. So it's a very quick example there for IMS provisioning. Another one I want to look into is, so if I go back up to IMS, look at the COBOL application deployment scenario. So this set of example has 3 playbooks. This one, so the first one allows a new COBOL app application to be deployed to IMS. So it has code for compiling and linking a COBOL application, loading any data that is pertaining to that application, and then from an IMS resources standpoint, creating any resources such as databases, transactions, or programs, and then finally starting those same resources so that the application can run. The second playbook is app deprovisioning or app undeployment. So again, it does similar things, except it stops the IMS resources, deletes them, and stops the MPP region or any other dependent regions that are pertaining to your application. And then finally, we have a redeployment playbook, which is used for the application redeployment scenario where the user has a COBOL application already up and running. They're looking to make a change to it, for example, an enhancement or a bug fix. And they're looking to make that change, deploy it to IMS, and have it run successfully in that dependent region as well. So this playbook will essentially recompile and link the COBOL application. It will refresh the IMS resources, so the same resources that were previously described, the DBs, the transactions, and the programs. And then it will also recreate an MPP region if it is required, and then start the MPP region. So a couple of flags. So there's a couple of customization items that we provide part of this playbook. So in the redeployment scenario, maybe you're not needing to rebuild everything. So in other words, you may not need to rebuild the ACB, in which case you can provide that information via a flag. And then same thing with the data. If you're looking to recompile the application, but not reload the data, essentially the data is the same, then you can specify that via this update data flag here. So I'll briefly kind of go over one of these playbooks here. So looking at application redeployment. So this playbook compared to the new application deployment playbook is a little bit shorter, which is why I wanted to cover it for the scope of this this presentation. But essentially, you'll see, I'll just go through each of the tasks here very quickly at a high level. So the first task here is around rebuilding and updating ACB lib. So depending on the flag that the user has passed in, if they've requested us to update the ACB lib, then we would invoke our rungen's role to rebuild, dbdgen, psvgen, and finally ACBgen using that information. And then we perform some checks to make sure everything is in order, and we make sure ACB lib is in sync with our inactive ACB info. And then finally here we perform, and then after that we perform a compilation and linking of the COBOL application. So the code has changed, and we want to recompile it and relink it and make sure we have that information ready. And I'll skip through one of these tasks here and move to reload data. For some situations, the data that's associated with my COBOL application, has changed. In which case, again, I would use the update data parameter to specify whether or not to reload the data. If this is set to true, we would invoke all these roles which reload all the data that's associated with my COBOL application. And then lastly here, we will, once all those tasks are complete and succeeded, we will refresh IMS resources. And this one in particular is actually an interesting role, shows our type 1 and type 2 command invocations. So I'll also briefly touch on that. So going back to my roles directory, I'm going to navigate to refresh IMS resources, tasks, and the implementation of these tasks. So in here, you'll see that when refresh IMS resources is invoked, we first stop the IMS program that is associated with my COBOL app. and next we stop the IMS transaction associated with the app. And then we stop the MPP region, create a new MPP region, as well as, and then start the IMS program and transaction. Now I did skip through some of the steps. We have separate roles for defining and starting the MPP region, as well as stopping the MPP region and deleting it. But those I'll skip for the scope of this presentation because they're mainly covered in the new app deployment scenario. But just to give you an example, you can invoke IMS commands here. So stop program, stop tran, start PGM, and start tran likewise.
So AJ, can you go back? To start and stop the IMS transaction using the Ansible way. So it's easy for someone that doesn't have the mainframe background to be easily on board and perform the similar task as well, because this is strictly a standard way on how you can issue tasks from an Ansible perspective. And then the other thing I want to point out, so in here you show how we do utilizing the Ansible capability from our IBM Z Ansible for IBM Z offering to issue the IMS command. But let's say if you already have an existing JCL that can do that task, you can actually from an Ansible playbook to call an existing JCL or REST script to do like restarting your region, for example. So that also gives you the flexibility on how you'll be able to build a Ansible playbook to do an application deployment, but be able to reuse your existing JCL automation in some of those tasks. So you can pretty much just link them together. And in the future, if you have to modify it and enhance it, right, you can also do that task in an Ansible way instead of building from a JCL, or giving your developers or your new employees or you have the flexibility to choose the language they're more familiar with, right? So if that person are very skillful in mainframe, they can continue to write those script or update those script in JCL, or someone that is new on board that they can use Ansible or using the playbook script as an alternative method to perform those tasks. And then finally, I also want to mention that what AJ is showing you right now, these are playbooks that we already built for you. So these are ready to use samples available in the sample repository. So we already built a workflow or playbook that help you to do the COBOL application deployment. So AJ is walking through the details of the content, but you can actually use that playbook as is. You just have to provide some of the input parameters and you can run to deploy the COBOL application. And then you can go into the playbook itself and to do some modification to customize the need, but you don't really have to build the whole thing from scratch because we already provide you the skeleton on how to do those tasks, whether it's a provisioning or the deployment playbook. You can just use this playbook as is from our sample repository. And then you just specify some of the environment variables in those files, and then you're ready to go. Okay, so those are the few things I want to add on and share. Back to you, AJ.
Yep, no, some good takeaways there. But yeah, essentially those are the two kind of sets of playbooks that I wanted to kind of show to this audience. And we're continuing to, so as Haley mentioned, I'll go back to this page right here. This is our samples collections repo. We're looking to definitely augment this and add support for more middleware provisioning playbooks as well. And if you have any ideas or if you have any content that you'd like to be added here, feel free to open a pull request and submit a request there, and we'd be happy to review that and bring that content in. All right. That being said, I am going to switch back to the presentation, slide deck, and pass it to Haley.
Thank you. So I want to take a quick pause here to see whether there's any questions from the audience. Just checking the chat right now. Yeah, if you have any questions, feel free to unmute, or you can put a question in the chat, and then AJ can help to answer while I talk to the remaining presentation. Okay, so I'm going to continue, but if you have any questions come up in your mind, feel free to put in the chat and we will get to you right away. All right, so to get started, I want to share with you a few pointers. Number one, if you are new to Ansible as a whole and want to see the values on what kind of use case that can potentially bring you to your enterprise for using our Ansible for IBM Z collection, I highly recommend you to leverage and look at our Z trial offering. So this is a guided demo environment. You don't have to install anything. It is all free. So we just have to click on the link in the chart, and we can get you in to sign up for the Z trial. Then we will provide you some login information that you can remotely access to our system that was at all the Ansible and the collection setup. So that was step number one. Step number two is after you go through the Z trial, if you're interested to actually bring that trial into your own environment, particularly we have many customers that are already using Red Hat Ansible automation platform, for example, in a distributed environment. So you are entitled to actually use the Ansible for IBM Z collection for free, because we didn't charge addition for the IBM Z offering, is where if you already have via subscription to so AJ, if you can go back to the previous chart.
Sure.
Yeah. So if you already have the Ansible subscription, you can download our IBM Z offering collections for free. And if you don't have the Ansible collection, then you can also leverage this free trial to experiment the Ansible platform into your own environment as well. So we have given you, multiple options on how to get the environment started. So after you have the Ansible platform in your environment, or you go through the Z trial, then what we suggest you to start looking at the Ansible for IBM Z sample playbook repository. As AJ has shown you earlier, we have a number of different pre-written, ready-to-use playbook that covers multiple use cases. There are use case and samples covering just the basic IBM Z automation operations, or there are samples covering specific middleware like Kix, IMS, DB2, and MQ, WebSphere, ZOS Connect, as well as some of the combination use cases that we also demonstrated there. And to install the Ansible for IBM Z into environment is very simple. These are the 5 simple steps. Basically, there are a couple of prerequisites that you will need, like the OpenSSH, you need the Python, and the COAU, the Z Open Automation utilities, and you make sure that you have to have the Ansible to the latest level. Then you can actually start browsing and downloading the samples as well as the desired Ansible collections, either for the Galaxy or the Automation Hub. So very easy to get started. And then this one, I do want to spend a few minutes, is because I highly, highly, highly recommend that anyone is interested in Ansible for IBM Z to join our IBM Z and Linux One community. We hold regular guild meeting every single month that we share the different use cases, new offerings, as well as we have people that coming in from customers or other people that have been exploiting the IBM Z offerings into the collections. Yeah, I think it plays automatically. AJ, can you just go back? Yes.
Yeah, I think it automatically.
Yeah, it has some of the timer. Apologies about that. Anyway, so here is the link that I highly recommend you to go into the Linux One community. We have blogs, we have all the recordings for the past recordings and presentations, so you can actually replay and to learn more about our offering. And then you can also join our community and join the call, such that you can help us to frame our next deliverable right into the IBM Z collections. Okay. And then finally, we have last few slides. This is a new offering. Is more, beyond just the automation. And I do want to kind of point out because it's brand new. We just announced it a couple months ago, and this is the cloud modernization stack. So if you go to the next slide, please. Yeah. So what I talked about earlier, right? The importance of or the needs from the enterprises in terms of the accelerating your application and modernization, and as well as IT automation in the three key main areas. So I think some of you have already started a journey where I talk about some of the APIs or the cloud native environment, but we provide solutions in the different areas. So what the cloud modernization stack is really bringing all those experience together. So we provide you kind of like one product that can help you the modernization and digital transformation in all the three areas, and provides you having this experience on top of the Red Hat OpenShift platform. So if we go to the next slide. Yep. So what the IBM Z Cloud Modernization Stack is really providing you a flexible and integrated environment for application modernization and IT automation. So we provide capability to help you to do application analysis, help you to create and deploy API in a secure and easy way to access your existing mainframe assets. We provide you the environment to do cloud native environments such that your developers now have empowered developers to be able to easily, modify or write brand new mainframe application and be able to use, pipeline and deploy those applications in a really easy fashion, have the same experience as if they're developing the mainframe application for a distributed platform. As well as the IT automation that we just cover, the Ansible offerings that allows you to use a standardized ways to automate your IT automation on ZOS and be able to help you to have a personalized ZOS sandbox environment on the Red Hat OpenShift and self-server access to many of the ZOS environment for dev and test. And then next chart is want to kind of show you a list of what is contained in the box, out of the box in that package. So out of the box with the modernization stack, you will get ZOS Connect, the Cloud Broker, and WASI Sandbox Code Analyze, the ZOS Package Manager, as well as the modern programming language on Z. So we're really hitting onto the different areas, right, that you will need to help you to do to transform your application, to modernize your application, and helping you to build hybrid cloud application as well. So ZOS Connect, as a lot of you know, it provides you a very simple no-code way to create ZOS API and have that runs on the OpenShift platform and access your existing mainframe access. Cloud Broker is an offering that can help you to integrate into the OpenShift and be able to manage your ZOS resources and services. For example, Cloud Broker will be able to help you to provision some of your ZOS services and middlewares. WASI Sandbox is basically a containerized self-service personal sandbox environment on OpenShift. So you can think about a mini ZOS that actually run on the OpenShift platform. It's especially useful if you're looking for your developer to be able to have their own isolated, separate environment to build the ZOS application for dev and test. So WASI Sample will be really appealing to your developers. WASI Code will be a development environment that will be able to launch from the OpenShift platform and be able to, it's a modern environment that will enable you to be able to edit, build, and debug your application with ZOS. So they will be launching a modern IDE from OpenShift and be able to interact with your backend application, not just for editing, but help you to do build as well as remote debugging, all sort of good capabilities that can help your developers to speed up their the development efficiency, right, for mainframe application. WASI Analyze will help you to rapidly analyze your application, so the developer will be able to discover the relationship between the different components within the application that will be useful. For example, if they want to identify some of the pieces, will help them to build up APIs, or when they're making a code changes one part of the application, they know what are the different pieces that may be affected that they have to rebuild. And then the ZOS Package Manager that will help you to deploy and manage ZOS software from the Red Hat OpenShift environment. So kind of moving away from the traditional way on how you install the ZOS component. Now you'll be able to deploy and manage software from the OpenShift interfaces. And finally is the support of all these new languages like Java, Node.js, Python, Go, and restricted use of C++, right? So those are helping you to be, out of the box, you will have all those language environments in place from the modernization stack. So you don't have to individual configure and install those components. It's like, one offering will give you a single platform with everything that you need to help you to do modernization for IBM Z. So again, because this is new offering, I do want to share with all of you. And if any of you are interested to know more about, the different use cases as well as how to get started for this modernization stack, we're happy to bring in the experts and come in and do another deep dive of this offering. But it is because it's so new and we're all so excited now. We have one single solution to help you with all these needs, and we'll love to introduce to you in this presentation. So with that, this is pretty much my last chart, and I want to say a big thank you to all of you attending this session. And if you have any thoughts, or if you want us to do any further discussions specific to your needs, we are also open. As I mentioned in all my previous presentation, we love working with our customers directly. So we have a lot of opportunities and programs that we can do any, customization in terms of if we're interested in some sort of a workshop or bringing some of these charts or presentation into your shop, and you want us to help to present it to other people in your team, we're happy to do it. Or if you're interested to do any POC, don't know how to get started, or asking us to help you to identify the potential use case for using the Ansible and IMS collection, let us know. We're happy to set up any of the follow-up calls with you.
Okay, brilliant.
Yep.
Thank you very much, Haley and AJ. If anyone's got any questions, then if you'd like to just pop them into the chat, and I'll read them out while we've got Haley. Her email address is on screen, so if you think of anything later, just jot down her email address now, and then you'll be able to email it to her. Or you can email them to me, and I'll pass them on. So let's see if we've got any questions for you, Haley. Can't see any coming. No, well, in that case, I'll say thank you very much. And as usual, because we're a virtual user group, Haley and AJ, please assume that we're giving you a virtual round of applause. So thank you very much. Let me just reclaim host and share my screen. Okay, just a couple of slides to finish off with then. Yes, no news this time. So no news is good news, I suppose. Articles and blogs. We've got Starter IMS and JVM dashboards available for Amiga Mon data provider. That's by James Porrell. That's on the IBM Z and Linux One community. That was at the beginning of the month. Whoops. And there was an article on Tech Channel called Can IMS Connect to the Outside World, written by me. So coming soon, 9th of August, then we've got What's New with IMS Performance Solution Pack. That's by James Martin. He's Senior Solution Advisor at Rocket Software. And then in October, we've got Radek Mervek from Broadcom talking about provision your databases in a modern way. Oh yes, sponsorship opportunity. So the virtual IMS user group has been in existence since 2007. The user group gives its sponsors an opportunity to show that they are working with and helping to build the user community. It's a good method for those sponsors to enhance the way they're viewed by customers and prospective customers. And it seems like a great opportunity for any organization to get close to the IMS community in a very positive way. So code sponsorship is currently available for the user group, and without sponsorship, we may not be able to continue. So if you work for a vendor, and this is something your company would be interested in, please let me know. My email address is on screen. Moving on, just a reminder that you can keep up to date with what's happening in the world of IMS and on the Virtual IMS User Group website by following us on Facebook and Twitter, and by joining the Virtual IMS group on LinkedIn. And the URLs for all of those are on our home page. And if you tweet, then our hashtag is #VirtualIMS. And lastly, I've got the YouTube logo there because we do have a YouTube channel. And it seems we need 100 people to subscribe to the channel so that we can have a sensible URL rather than one generated by YouTube. So if you follow the link on our resources page to any of the previous webinars we've done, then you can subscribe, and that would really help us. Okay, well, that's all for this meeting of the Virtual IMS User Group. Can I thank you all for attending? Thanks to BMC Software for sponsoring our user group. And I particularly want to thank Haley Fung and Ajay Jashnani for today's presentation. So that's it. Thank you all very much for joining the meeting. And I look forward to seeing you again on the 9th of August. So thank you and goodbye.